Hello, good afternoon. It's a little weird to be here. The last time I was on this stage was 1993's production of Brigadoon here at GHS, so it's a little weird. But I digress. My name is Melinda Person, and I am the president of New York State United Teachers, the union representing nearly 700,000 educators and other professionals in New York State. I was born and raised here in the Capital Region. I attended Guilderland Public Schools. I'm a proud graduate 30 years ago this year. I'm also the mother of 4 children who attend Guilderland Public Schools, so this is really a homecoming for me in more ways than one. The Foundation Aid formula is near and dear to me, not only because it directly affects teaching and learning in every New York State school, but because I've been here for every step of the conversation. My 11th grade social studies teacher, Mr. Milligan, who's here today in the front row, he told me about the CFE case in 1993 when it was filed. And I remember hearing about the constitutional right to a sound basic education, and I observed as a 17-year-old that 40 years after Brown versus Board of Education, we still had a separate and unequal education system in New York State and across the nation. Later in life, as a young staffer at the state capitol, I worked on this issue deciphering equations and acronyms that built the formula in 2007. So I'm one of the few people who understand that chart up on the screen. With NYSUT, I joined the decades-long battle to fully fund foundation aid, and last year we celebrated like crazy when that finally happened for the first time in state history. This is a remarkable achievement, but it took decades, and in that time, the devastating effects of chronic underfunding of our public schools had taken root. Since 2007, our schools are significantly different than they were back then. And over the past few hearings, you've heard from so many of my colleagues, educators who've testified about what they've seen firsthand, and I'm just going to echo a few of the points they've made. Our student demographics are rapidly shifting. Our kids are showing up to school with bigger and more urgent needs, and our schools are playing a larger role in the lives of our students and families than ever before. Across the state, from the largest cities to the most rural counties, nearly 1 in 5 of our students, 1 in 2 in Rochester or Syracuse, are entering our classrooms with the physical and emotional burdens of poverty. New York State's child poverty rate is one of the worst in the nation, ranking 41st nationally, according to a recent report by Comptroller DiNapoli. We are also seeing greater and more complex mental health conditions among our students that require care from specialists, counselors, and psychologists. Children cannot learn when they're hungry. They cannot focus when they're worried about whether they will have a place to sleep at night. They cannot rise to their true potential when they're dealing with untreated health conditions. Our current formula, which uses old data, does not properly account for the fact that schools are doing more than ever before, and our schools have become the social safety net for New York's children and families. In Brentwood on Long Island, schools are the central hub for the diverse suburban community. On top of the normal costs of educating kids, schools feed kids with food pantries, they run clothing drives, they do translation services for families. In Deposit in rural Delaware County, geographic isolation means the school is the only lifeline for miles for students. It is often the only way some students will have access to diverse cultural experiences that expose them to the world. And while some districts have seen enrollment declines in recent years, this does not necessarily mean they need fewer resources. Building, infrastructure, staffing, program, and service costs are unchanged, and in many cases, the formula has not kept up with these changes. Some of this means simply updating elements of the foundation aid formula, and we will submit written testimony about which specific elements we think need updating. The pupil needs index, the regional cost, all of these have been discussed at length, the need to bring us up to the most recent data. But we also need to reevaluate measures like English language learners, homelessness, and enrollment growth, how those are dealt with in the formula. We've talked a lot this year about the Save Harmless provision, which is an important mechanism for giving school districts a sense of fiscal stability. But that is only one small sliver of the total foundation aid picture and conversation. So much has changed since Mr. Milligan first explained school funding to me 30 years ago. But one thing has not. The guiding question should be, how can we fund our schools so that we provide all of New York students with the public education we promised them in our state constitution? The question should not be, how can we manipulate this formula to fit into a box or save money? Constitutional commitments are just that, commitments. And as my daughter Lindy starts kindergarten here in Guilderland in 2 weeks, I am keenly aware of the impact these decisions will have on students and families in this generation. As we examine how to create Foundation Aid 2.0, we must start with what we know, that schools are the centers of our communities, that they provide a social safety net for New York's families, and fully funded public schools will determine the future of our great state.